Today, we're talking about one of the biggest ideas in human history. A concept so powerful, it literally moved the Earth and completely reshaped our place in the universe. This is the story of Nicolaus Copernicus and the quiet revolution he started from a cathedral tower in Poland. So let's just start with this question, because it's a huge one. How do you convince the entire world to throw out a truth it has believed for 15 centuries? I mean, that's the mountain Copernicus had to climb. He wasn't just suggesting a new theory. He was asking people to reject what they could see with their own eyes. And this is what it all boiled down to. On the right, you've got the old way, the Ptolemaic model, with a stationary Earth right in the middle of everything. To explain why planets sometimes seem to go backward, it needed this incredibly complicated system of circles spinning on other circles. But then, on the left, you have Copernicus's idea, a much cleaner, more elegant, sun-centered system, and the choice between these two would basically define the next century of science. So let's really dive into this world-changing idea. What did it actually mean to shift the entire center of the universe? For 1,500 years, this was the universe. Period. A fixed, unmoving Earth at the heart of all creation. And to make the math work, to explain why planets sometimes did that weird backward dance in the sky, astronomers had to invent this amazingly complex system of cosmic gears, planets moving in little circles called epicycles, which were themselves moving on bigger circles. It kind of worked, but boy, was it getting clunky. And then, you see this, the beautiful simplicity of Copernicus's solution, right from his own book, De Revolutionibus. Just look how clean it is. By putting the sun in the middle and making Earth just another planet going around it, he created a system that felt so much more harmonious. You know, this wasn't some wild guess he just threw out there. Copernicus built his whole theory on a logical foundation of 7 key ideas. So let's run through them. He says there's no single center of the universe and that the Earth moves. But the real kicker, the absolute game changer, is that last one. That strange backward motion of the planets, it's just an illusion. It's caused by our own planet Earth lapping other planets in the race around the sun. That idea changed everything. But who was the man who dared to redraw the entire cosmos? Well, as you're about to see, he was so much more than just a guy staring at the stars. This statue is at Frombork Cathedral, which is where Copernicus worked as a church official for most of his life. And that's really important. The guy who turned the universe inside out wasn't some lone wolf academic. He was a man of the church, deeply involved in the day-to-day business of the world around him. And this list, it's just incredible. We think of him as Copernicus the astronomer, but he was a true Renaissance man, a doctor of church law, a practicing physician, a diplomat, a governor. He even wrote about economics. It was this incredible breadth of knowledge that gave him the tools to see what everyone else had missed. But an idea this revolutionary isn't something you just announce overnight. In fact, Copernicus sat on his theory for decades, basically guarding what would become a world-changing secret. This timeline really puts it all into perspective. He starts seeing problems with the old system way back in the 1490s. By around 1514, he's quietly sharing his thoughts with a few close friends. But his masterpiece, the book with his life's work, it doesn't get published until 1543, nearly 30 years later, literally as he was on his deathbed. So why did he wait so long? Well, this quote gets to his biggest fear, and it's not what most people think. He wasn't afraid of the church, not at first. He was terrified of being ridiculed by other scientists. He knew his ideas were so radical, so counterintuitive, that he'd risk being dismissed as a total crank. And honestly, we might never have read his book if it weren't for a young guy named George Rethicus. He was a brilliant mathematician who heard rumors about Copernicus's wild theory and literally traveled across Europe just to learn from him. He spent 2 years pushing the old astronomer to publish, and it was that persistence that finally got Copernicus to share his secret with the world. All right, so the book is finally out there. What happens next? While the aftershock was immediate, it was complicated, and the biggest criticisms came from a place you might not expect. You'd think the Catholic Church would be the first to complain, right? Nope. The first big attacks actually came from leaders of the Protestant Reformation. Philip Melanchthon, a close colleague of Martin Luther, just called the idea absurd. He thought it went against a literal reading of the Bible and even said rulers should stamp out such foolishness. But here's the wild part. Years before the book was even published, Copernicus was getting fan mail from high-ranking Catholic officials. This letter is from a cardinal in 1536, basically begging Copernicus to publish his work. So at the beginning, the Catholic hierarchy was actually more curious than critical. And here is a fascinating little twist in the story. The guy overseeing the printing of the book, a theologian named Andreas Osiander, secretly added his own anonymous preface. He basically told readers, hey, don't take this literally, it's just a mathematical tool, a hypothesis, not a description of how the universe actually is. It gave everyone a bit of cover. And this is a really crucial point people miss. The church didn't officially condemn the book for another, get this, 73 years. It was only suspended in 1616, and that was mostly because Galileo came along with his telescope and started arguing that Copernicus wasn't just guessing, he was right. So what's the ultimate legacy here? Well, Copernicus's book wasn't the end of the story. It was the starting pistol for the scientific revolution. And this just shows the incredible chain reaction he kicked off. Copernicus gave everyone the radical new blueprint. That inspired Tycho Brahe to spend decades collecting the most accurate data the world had ever seen. Then Johannes Kepler used all that data to figure out the real laws of how planets move. And finally, Galileo pointed a telescope at the sky and found the smoking gun. And this was Galileo's key proof. In the old Earth-centered system, on the right, from our point of view, Venus could never look full, like a full moon. It's just geometrically impossible. But as you can see on the left, Galileo looked through his telescope and saw Venus go through a full set of phases. And that was only possible if Venus was going around the sun. That single observation basically broke the old 1500-year-old model. And the story has this amazing modern epilogue. For centuries, nobody knew exactly where Copernicus was buried. But in 2008, scientists managed to match DNA from a strand of hair found in one of his old books to remains found under the cathedral floor. He was finally reburied with full honors in 2010, a final recognition for the man who moved the world. And that leaves us with one last really powerful thought. Copernicus proved that even the most deeply held common sense beliefs can be totally wrong. So it has to make you wonder, if one quiet scholar could completely upend our understanding of the cosmos, what accepted truth of our time is just waiting for its own Copernicus to come along?